Hello everybody, Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Monday's edition, and we're broadcasting from beautiful Irvine, California. Happy to have you with us today. I hope everybody had a nice, relaxing August weekend. Boy, it's hot out there across the country. Woo! But I got to tell you, folks, the Democrats finally did it. I mean, let me ask you a question. This really goes to maybe some of the independents, some of the more liberal Republicans who voted for Joe Biden, would you still have voted for him if you knew that the Democratic Party was going to pass a bill that increased the number of IRS agents by 80,000? I bet not. Would you have voted for Joe Biden and the Democrats if you realized that as a result of this bill passing, there's now going to be rationing of drugs? Oh yeah, you never thought about that, I'm sure. Basically, this tax and spending bill, climate, drug, however you want to call it, the Senate parliamentarian gave the okay for the Democrats to move forward. And that's what they called, the tax, climate, drug bill to proceed. There was a slew of amendments offered. None of them had a prayer of going through. And after an all-night session Saturday night into Sunday morning, the bill passed the Senate, 50-50 vote right along party lines, and then Kamala Harris, as is constitutionally appropriate, broke the tie. And, again, according to Jonathan Karl, Joe Biden got credit for nothing, as he should have. He wasn't even involved in the process. But think about what's happening now. We're going to have $450 billion in spending while inflation's still running hot. Think about that. We had a 9.1% inflation print last month. Now, we're going to get another one this month that's expected to come down a little bit, maybe into the 7s, low 8s. High 7s, low 8s. We're hoping. But in the midst of that, they passed this monstrosity of a bill. I know it's Build Back Better light. But the things in this bill do absolutely nothing. Nothing to help bring down inflation. Zero. Matter of fact, they're going to make it worse. They put subsidies in this bill so that rich people and upper middle class income Americans and wealthy Americans can buy electric vehicles when the demand for electric vehicles exceeds the supply right now. There was no reason whatsoever to put incentives for electric vehicles into a bill and cost the government money. I listened to Kevin O'Leary on CNBC earlier this morning say, basically, we should have a party and just burn money. That's what the government did here. He's right. So you bring out subsidies for a group that does not need it. You come up with an idea that's going to cause drugs to be rationed. You bring in 86,000 new IRS agents. And you hear the argument, well, for people following the law, they shouldn't be afraid of new IRS agents. Folks, have any of you ever been through an IRS audit before? You can do everything 100% perfect. You can have the best CPAs handling your tax returns. Sometimes errors happen. And most people say it's not a pleasant experience. They added a minimum corporate tax rate of 15%. A lot of people say, well, Mark, what's wrong with that? Again, corporations are going to pass the tax through. And when the president says, oh, there's nobody making under $400,000 a year getting a tax bill, it's not true again. There's no language written into this bill, but by definition, as taxes are passed along, people will pay it. There's an excise tax on gasoline. What did we tell you last week? If you want more of something, don't tax it. Who were the big winners in this thing? Okay, well, we've talked about it. Electric car manufacturers, like Tesla really needs to get credits. Again, there's more demand for electric cars right now than there is supply. That's why the Democrats, they constantly lie to their base. They think this is going to be a big winner. It's not. Now, fossil fuels did okay in this bill because of some insistence from Manchin. We'll acknowledge that. That's a good thing. Renewable energy. There's a lot of credits in there for solar panel makers, possibly for biomass, companies that use biomass to make energy. But at the end of the day, when you look about the cost of this bill, does someone really need a $7,500 credit to buy a car, just putting more money into the system? Shoot, the Federal Reserve is trying to raise interest rates to cool demand so we can get this inflation back down under a 2% level. This bill does absolutely nothing. And Wharton School of Economics, University of Pennsylvania, nonpartisan study, they said the effect of this on inflation will be plus or minus 0.1%, which is negligible. It's nothing. Again, every Republican voted against it. Obviously, Manchin's arm got twisted. Kyrsten Sinema, did what we expected. She got the piece out of it that she wanted, which was a carried interest piece. We talked a little bit about that last week. But here we are, already have demand for electric cars exceeding supply. Most seniors like their Medicare plans. But here again, what do the Democrats do? They want to subsidize Obamacare again. And you're going to pay for it. So again, I'm not being partisan, but there is literally, I could not think of a worse time to do something like this. We do not need to be putting more fuel on the fire of inflation. And whoever named this bill for the Democrats, boy, they need to go back to school. This is the Inflation Enhancement Act, not the Inflation Reduction Act. Gosh, what a misnomer that is. All right, let's talk a little economics here. Now that we got this horrific bill out of the way. Ugh, terrible. The good news is this. As you saw maybe over the weekend, 528,000 jobs were created in July. This was like 225,000 more than expected. The unemployment rate fell down to 3.5%. Those are good numbers, folks. Absolutely good numbers. But you have to ask yourself the question, why do 70% of Americans believe the economy is going to get worse? Well, that's an easy answer, and I'll tell you why. Yes, people are happy they have jobs. That's a good thing. But we have a situation where the wages, which are increased. Folks, may not realize the average wage in this country is now $32 an hour. Go out and try hiring someone. Remember the old $15 an hour that the Democrats were pushing? Try to hire someone for $15. See how many takers you get. Now, having said that about creating all those jobs, it's a great thing. But again, why does 70% of Americans think the economy is going to get worse? Well, because roughly 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They're having to get second jobs. Why? Because the inflation rate's running higher than their wage gains. It's like running on a treadmill. You're not going anywhere. Yeah. So, yes, good, excellent jobs number. Now, what's that going to mean? Well, the Federal Reserve meets next month. Will the Federal Reserve, they previously targeted raising interest rates 50 basis points. Now some on Wall Street believe they may need to do another 75. There's plenty of time to get additional data between now and then. But while the administration is focused on Build Back Better Light, otherwise known as the Inflation Production Act, they're not doing anything to help the average American who is drowning with this inflation. The Federal Reserve is having some effect, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. But it has nothing to do with Biden. And maybe going back to Jonathan Karl's comment on ABC News about he gets no credit for this because he doesn't deserve any credit. Manchin and Schumer kept it secret. Why did they keep it secret? They didn't want to have it leaked out that they were getting close to getting a deal. So we'll follow this as it goes along. And we're optimistic, based upon some of the medicine the Fed has given the economy, that things may slow down a little bit. But boy, to do that in this time's problematic. All right, let me get into a little bit of politics now. Okay, so Republicans have chosen Milwaukee as the site for their 2024 convention. Makes perfect sense to me. You would think you'd want to have it in a swing state. Well, Wisconsin's a swing state, so that's where they've decided to have the convention. Now, the Conservative Political Action Conference was held I think it was in Denver. And to no surprise, when they have their straw poll at the end of this, these are what I call hardcore party activists, generally more conservative than the rest of the party. In the straw poll, Trump won the straw poll 69-24 over Ron DeSantis. Now, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean a whole lot, because the belief, and I'm in this camp too, Trump's endorsements mean a lot. He is still the 800-pound gorilla in the party. Now, will he run? We don't know, but all indications look like he will. Now, when's he going to announce? I don't know. It would be best, I believe, if he announced sometime after the midterm elections, if he decides to run. Then you could really gauge, well, how did those Trump-endorsed candidates do in the general election? Yes, a lot of them have done really well winning primaries. We've got one coming up tomorrow. And boy, we hope she wins up in Connecticut. Leora was great last week on Schaftlein Report on Thursday, Leora Levy. And she got an endorsement from President Trump 3-4 hours after we aired our show last week. So we're really pulling for her on Tuesday. Now, with no Trump in the race, this gets a little interesting. DeSantis, 65%. Donald Trump Jr., 8%. Ted Cruz, 6%. Mike Pompeo, 5%. What does that tell me? Not too much. Again, we've voiced an opinion on this show for a long time. Whether President Trump seeks re-election or not, we believe there will be other candidates that enter the race after Trump announces one way or another. And we've thrown out some names, potential names. We've talked about possibly Ron DeSantis, assuming he wins in November, and he's heavily favored to do so, re-elected as governor. We've talked about former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Ted Cruz came in second to Trump last time. Would he consider running again? Maybe. Vice President Pence, it's pretty clear to us Pence looks like he's going to run. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, former Governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, all potential candidates. Senator Tom Cotton, Senator Josh Hawley, there could be others. And I believe that there will be a contested field with or without President Trump. And we'll see as it moves along. But what do I make out of the CPAC piece? Not too much, because generally speaking, the MAGA version of the Republican Party is a little more conservative, tends to be more to the right than the, quote, what I'll call average Republican. And believe me, there's room in the party for both, folks, because anything to the right of center is a good thing. So we'll see as it plays out. But does it mean too much this early in the day? Look, Ron DeSantis hasn't even announced he's running. I know. Everybody thinks he's going to. DeSantis is a really smart governor. He's not going to do anything until, A, he wins his own election, and then takes a view of what the landscape looks like. Now, again, I think, and again, based on experience, I think we're going to have a crowded field with or without Trump. And I think that's a great thing because it's going to give voters a choice to see about policies. The Democratic policies don't work, folks. They were abject failures. Everything they've done has contributed towards inflation. Thank goodness. Again, I'm not going to criticize Manchin too much. I didn't like the fact he supported this, but if you give me the Inflation Production Act, which is what this is, versus Build Back Better, I'll take this 100 out of 100. Build Back Better was a $3.2 trillion monstrosity of all kind of garbage. In this bill, there's $450 billion in spending over 10 years, $750 billion in revenue. Supposedly, it's going to pay down the deficit $300 billion over 10 years, $30 billion a year. We'll see. Now, we talked last week when early voting came out. Joe Kent, who's appeared on Schaftlein Report twice, good friend of the show, Joe's running for Congress in Washington District 8. Well, he's rallied. They've got 89% of the votes counted. Now, again, how long, this election going on what? A week? Why aren't 100% of the votes counted? But anyhow, Joe Kent's only 257 votes out of second place. In Washington, the way it works, they have these open primaries. Well, in this case, the Democrat came in first. The existing Jamie Herrera, I think is her name, she came in second. She's 257 votes ahead of Joe Kent. Now, what they do, there were more Republicans that voted in the primary than the Democrats. It's likely going to be a retained Republican seat, but only the top two move forward in the fall election. Joe's right now 257 votes short with 11% left to count. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that Joe Kent can eke that one out. It would be tremendous. He's a rock-solid conservative. He's a veteran, and he's right on all the issues, folks. Very sharp guy. So we're pulling for you, Joe. All right, now let's get into some of the things happening of why things have gotten so bad. These blue cities, okay? The sanctuary cities, and let's take two main ones. New York City and Washington, D.C. Liberal bastions, both of them. I think D.C. is made up like 94, 95% Democrats. Well, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas continues sending illegal migrants to New York City and D.C. And you might say, well, Mark, why is he doing that? Well, he's doing it because he's overwhelmed. The Biden administration and Secretary Mayorkas effectively have an open border policy. People see right through it. Texas can't handle the onslaught. So what do? Do what Doug Ducey, the governor of Arizona, and Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas. Send them up to these sanctuary cities in the Northeast. And they're continuing to do it. And the mayor of Washington had requested, quote, National Guard help. Well, guess what? The military said no. Not for that. Manage it yourself. You're a sanctuary city, deal with it. Same thing in New York City. I was watching a Fox News reporter over the weekend interviewing citizens of New York City. They're not happy about this. They're not happy, not that illegals are coming to New York City. Look, most Americans are welcoming people, including this show. We just want people to come in legally, not illegally. I'll tell you how bad crime's got in New York. This is an astounding statistic. Crime has gotten so bad in New York City. Get a load of this, folks. 10 individual criminals have been arrested 500 times. Get your arms around those figures for a minute. That's astounding. 50 arrests per person on average. Why? Bail reform in New York. What bail, you might ask? Well, what they do in New York, unless it's the most heinous crimes like murder, rape, using a weapon in the commission of a crime, anything short of that, they get arrested, No bail. They let them right back out on the street to commit more crimes. The insanity of this. And here again, businesses, they're moving away from these high crime blue cities. These are cities that had George Soros-backed district attorneys. We've seen it in San Francisco. We've seen it just up the road in Los Angeles. I mean, think about that. Do you want to live in a city that has a revolving door where criminals get let out time after time after time and they commit more crime? Most people don't. Or do you want to be in an area where there's safety and security, where the police are supported by the politicians and not vilified? You're going to continue to see people fleeing New York City, folks. It's bad enough. They commit the crimes, and then to change the bail system where only the most heinous of crimes do they keep them in jail. It's unbelievable. So in some, classic cases, the Democrats are getting what they wanted. Their radical liberal base, the far left wing of the Democratic Party, they wanted this defund the police. They wanted the cops vilified. Well, you know what? We saw stories over the weekend about a large percentage of the New York City Police Department, more than in a typical year, they're retiring or they're leaving the force. Some are leaving before they reach the 20-year point of which they qualify for pensions, full pensions. I mean, if you want to continue with these insane policies, it's going to happen in all these blue cities. Crime's going to escalate. People will move out. The tax base will deteriorate. And you're going to be left with just a bunch of Democrats residing in deep blue cities. Sure, there'll be some red state Republicans that'll be in there, of course. I'm not saying it literally, I'm saying it figuratively. But again, if you're letting people out with no bail and they continue to commit these crimes, who wants to be in an area like that? Nobody. We've talked about it numerous times. People want stable prices. We don't have that under Biden. They want a secure work environment, a place to live and raise their kids. You don't have that in these deep blue cities. People want to be able to fill up their car with gas and buy food at reasonable prices. We don't have that either. And now a lot of people are even revolted. They don't want to be taught this crazy woke ideology and all the transgenderism that the Democratic Party is stuffing down people's throats in the education system. Now, it is interesting, though. A lot of the media was trying to spin, well, Biden had a really good week. I'm saying, really, why? What was so good about it? Well, the Senate passed Build Back Better Light, the Inflation Act. Okay, yeah, that happened. Biden killed a terrorist. Well, the military did. Yeah, give them credit for that, sure. Gasoline prices have continued coming down. They came down for like 50 days in a row. We literally reached a point where people couldn't pay $7 a gallon for gas and demand subsided. We're still sitting here, though, right now. We'll see what the inflation number comes out at, but it's going to be upper sixes or in the sevens, best case scenario. But politically, has Biden gotten a little bit of a bounce? The answer is yes, he has. Rasmussen Reports, which again we cite often as one of the major polling companies, in addition to Trafalgar, that gets it right, they've got Biden's approval rating at 45%. That's way higher than when he was marred around the mid-30s. The Real Clear Politics average has him up to 39.6%. He's still significantly underwater, like 19 points underwater. And you heard all the talk of the Democrats over the weekend, some of them. I mean, we listen to these shows so you don't have to. But there's a lot of grumbling on the Democratic Party. They do not want Biden to run again. Now, the White House is continuing to insist, full speed ahead. Look at what we've accomplished. Gas prices are coming down. We killed a terrorist. We passed a bill. His approval rating has gone up a little bit because Rasmussen's a firm we respect. We criticize him. We talked about it on the way down. It's still low. You're 19 points underwater. But it has improved a little bit. Now, on the generic ballot, Republicans in that same Rasmussen poll are +3. Now, I know you've heard a lot about it's tight, it's really tight. Well, the Real Clear Politics average has Republicans up by only 0.1%. So, how do I handicap it right now? I've said all along, these races will tighten as we head into October and November. I still believe the Republicans will pick up somewhere in the range of 20, max 25 House seats. I think the real number is going to be close to 20. That will give the Republicans control of the House of Representatives. But some of the models out there showing 40 to 50, could it happen? Sure. To me, inflation would have to get a whole lot worse than it is now, and I don't see that happening. So I heard Nikki Haley talking over the weekend. You know, Republicans do need to campaign as though they're behind. Pull out all the stops, everything you can do, because this is a mission-critical election. We've got to stop these Democrats from what they're doing. And the only way to do that is to gain control of the House of Representatives, where all the spending bills come from. Now, on the senatorial side, I listened to Mitch McConnell, I listened to Senator Rick Scott. You know, there's a path forward to Republicans taking control of the Senate, and some people believe that'll happen. I'm on the fence on that one. I think it could go either way. You know, if you look at the map, in Pennsylvania, where we have a retiring Republican senator, Dr. Oz is down. Could he come back? Sure, he could come back. But that would be a flip for the Democrats if Oz doesn't win. The Ohio Senate race, much closer than expected. Again, Rob Portman retired. J.D. Vance is leading his Democratic opponent, but not by much. In Nevada, potential Republican pickup. Adam Laxalt seems to be leading there. That would be a pickup for the Republicans. Arizona could go either way. Mark Kelly, he's going to be in a tight race. The Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock race in Georgia, fascinating. That's going to tighten up. So I'm saying there's paths for Republicans to win in the Senate. There's also paths for them to lose. McConnell thinks it's going to be close either way. So I tend to listen to Mitch McConnell. He's one of the sharpest politicians, despite what Trump said. Mitch McConnell, he's had a lot of wins in dealing with this Democratic Senate. So we'll keep an eye on it. But I think, again, people are upset that the Democratic Party is focusing on issues that are not a priority. And again, I watched some of these commentators talking over the weekend. You know what the Democratic commentators are saying? They're saying, well, the abortion issue is that's what's really going to get us going. Really? I think that may have peaked. There will be some single issue voters for sure. But I think at the end of the day, Jim Carville was right, former Clinton advisor. It's the economy, stupid. And I think it's going to be the economy again. Yes, some single issue voters will vote for Democrats over the abortion issue, and some will vote on the Republican side too. But overall, what I deem 70% of the electorate, which is either center left or center right, not the far left or the far right, but the center of this country, they're not single issue voters, but they generally vote based upon their pocketbooks. And right now, as we told you earlier in the show, 70% of them think the economy could become problematic. Now let's talk a little bit about consumer confidence, a little economics as we get ready to sort of close it out here. Okay? Consumer confidence in the housing market. Housing market hit a 10-year low. That doesn't surprise me at all. You know, when you have a situation where we had artificially low interest rates for a while, and the Fed pumping money into the system and multiple buyers, well, people are going to start feeling some pain from that. Prices are going to come down. They've already started. Talked to numerous real estate professionals over the past week. Gone are the days of multiple offers on a house, people bidding more than the asking price. Those days aren't there anymore, and for good reason. Interest rates moved up, have caused mortgage rates to move up, no surprise. Now, there's still not enough housing supply in the country, but the idea now, a lot of people have been priced out of the market. You know, when you have inflation running, pick a number, 8, 9% the last 2 months, and you have interest rates starting to tick up, getting a mortgage now 5 to 6% range, a lot more than the old 2 to 3% at the height of it. And here's another odd thing, okay? We knew this would happen in housing, and it is happening. But you say, well, Mark, what's the expectation? Well, this is what Americans feel. Americans are expecting 6.2% inflation for the next year. Now, is that better than what we had the last 3 months where it was 8, 8.7, 9.1? Yeah, it's better. That is still incredibly high, though. Believe me, at those levels, people, you can't have 6.2% inflation. But that's the expectation for next year. And then the expectation for the following 3 years is 3.2. 3.2 sounds reasonable. However, you got to remember this. For the last 10 years, the Fed had a hard time getting inflation over 2%. And they're finding now it wasn't transitory at all. And it's a heck of a lot harder to get it down than it was to get it up. So, can the Federal Reserve orchestrate a soft landing? Maybe. But these interest rate hikes tend to take 3, 4, 5 months to filter into the economy. We still have some time to go on that. That's why the Fed will be watching these numbers over the next couple months, the balance of August and September, before they have their next meeting. And we'll get the inflation number coming up within a week to see how we ended up doing for the month of July. My expectation, again, we were at 2 consecutive months. April and May, we were in the 8s. June, we hopefully peaked at 9.1. I'm expecting a number probably with an 8 handle, optimistically maybe a 7 handle. We'll call it 7.5 to 8.5, and hopefully the 9.1 was the peak. But folks, a society can't function properly if we're at these levels of inflation. Too many people get hurt. And we've got to get our arms around this. And again, you say to yourself, well, why doesn't Biden get credit? Well, what would you credit him for? Yes, he's going to sign the bill into law, of course. But it seems to me like the Democrats got this through despite the president, not with his help. But just like he did when they signed last year, first quarter of his presidency, a $1.9 trillion spending bill, look how much inflation we got as a result of that. You know, people like getting the freebies, but when the bill comes time, not as much fun. But let's summarize what we're talking about here. People are still ticked off about inflation. Gas prices have come down for about 54 consecutive days. They're still high. People don't like all these prosecutors letting these criminals go. People are unhappy with what's going on at the border. Yes, the social issues have energized some on the left, some on the right. But the president is still sitting here, as of today, about 19 points underwater. But these congressional races, again, share the good and the bad. The problem with Biden doesn't seem to be fully carrying over to the congressional races and the senatorial ones. Why? Because candidates matter. And people will vote for candidates that believe they're going to represent their best interest. So we're going to keep a close eye on it. Again, we cut through all the propaganda for you. and we're going to stay on top of it. We got some really good guests coming up this week, but overall, folks, things can get better, and if we can have a Republican House come November, they're going to get a lot better, and a lot of people on Wall Street are banking on that. All right, folks, again, I hope you had a great weekend. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for viewing and listening today. We'll see you on Tuesday. Have a good evening.